Picture this: someone tells you their boss put them in the hot seat during a meeting, and for a split second your brain pictures an actual chair, glowing red, scorching the poor guy's trousers. Or maybe a friend mentions a story that's hot off the press, and you wonder if journalists are somehow baking their articles in an oven before publishing them. Sounds ridiculous, right? But if English isn't your first language, these images genuinely flash through your mind before logic kicks in. I'm Ja, and today we're doing something a little different. We're taking the word hot, a word you already know, a word tied to temperature, spice, and summer afternoons, and we're going to strip away everything you thought you understood about it. Because in English, hot rarely has anything to do with heat at all. It shows up in business meetings, in gossip between friends, in newsrooms, in arguments, in moments of panic, and in stories about chases and competition. So pour yourself something warm, settle in, and let's turn up the temperature on your vocabulary, not literally, of course. Let's start with a phrase you've probably heard in interviews, press conferences, or courtroom dramas: being in the hot seat. Forget chairs entirely. This phrase has nothing to do with furniture and everything to do with pressure. When someone is in the hot seat, they're stuck in an uncomfortable, high-stakes position, usually because they're being questioned, challenged, or held accountable for something. Think about a company's CEO standing in front of a room full of reporters after a scandal breaks. Every question feels like an attack, every answer gets picked apart. That executive isn't sitting on burning metal, they're sitting under the weight of scrutiny, and that's the hot seat. Or imagine a team manager whenever a project fails. Even if the mistake wasn't entirely their fault, they're the one who has to explain it, defend it, and fix it. As the manager, he's always in the hot seat when something goes wrong, captures that perfectly. It's not about blame alone, it's about being the person forced to answer for it. Nobody enjoys being there. It's tense, it's uncomfortable, and it tests how well you can think under pressure. So here's a challenge for you. Think of a moment, maybe at work, maybe in school, maybe even in a family conversation, when you felt like you were in the hot seat. Write your own sentence using the phrase and drop it in the comments. I genuinely want to see how you'd use it in real life, because that's how a phrase actually sticks in your memory, not by memorizing a definition, but by attaching it to something personal. Now let's shift from pressure to speed, because our next phrase is all about freshness and timing. Hot off the press. You know that feeling when your coffee or tea is poured straight from the kettle, still steaming, still at its absolute best. That's the emotional core of this phrase, except we're not talking about drinks, we're talking about information. When something is described as hot off the press, it means it's brand new, freshly released, the kind of update that hasn't had time to grow old or get passed around yet. In the world of journalism, this is what people call breaking news, the very latest headline, the update everyone's scrambling to share before anyone else does. And here's something that makes the phrase even more interesting. It isn't just a clever metaphor, it actually comes from real printing presses. Decades ago, when newspapers rolled off industrial printing machines, the freshly printed pages would still be physically warm from the printing process itself. Readers who grabbed the very first copies were, quite literally, holding paper that was hot off the press. Over time, the phrase stuck around long after most newspapers stopped being warm to the touch, and it evolved into a general expression for anything brand new and urgent. You'll hear it used in sentences like, "This news is hot off the press, the company just announced a new product," where the speaker is emphasizing that this information is fresh, immediate, and worth paying attention to right now. Or picture a more dramatic example: the actor was removed from the set. This is hot off the press, which signals that whoever's speaking just found out and is passing along the update in real time before it's had a chance to spread everywhere else. It's the language of urgency, the language of "you need to hear this right now, because it just happened." Notice something about both of these phrases so far: they take an everyday physical sensation, the discomfort of heat or the warmth of something freshly made, and repurpose it to describe emotional or social situations. That's the trick behind almost every hot idiom in English. And once you see that pattern, the rest of these phrases start to feel far less random and far more logical. In the next part, we're moving from pressure and freshness into something messier, quite literally. We'll talk about what it means to find yourself in hot water and why nobody in their right mind wants to be handed a hot potato. Stick around because these next two phrases are the ones you'll hear constantly in everyday conversation, especially when things go wrong or when nobody wants to take responsibility. Let's talk about water for a moment, not the refreshing kind you drink on a hot afternoon, but the kind that scalds you the second it touches your skin. Imagine accidentally dipping your hand into a pot that's been boiling on the stove. Your instinct is to pull back immediately because that discomfort is sharp and immediate. Now transfer that same sensation to a situation involving people rather than pots, and you've got the idiom "in hot water." This phrase describes being caught in an uncomfortable, often stressful situation, and almost always it's a situation you brought on yourself. Maybe you missed a deadline at work and instead of owning up to it honestly, you told a small lie to buy yourself some time. That lie might feel like a clever shortcut in the moment, but it rarely stays hidden. Sooner or later, someone notices the inconsistency, and suddenly you're not just dealing with a missed deadline, you're dealing with a trust problem too. That's exactly the kind of scenario this phrase captures. Consider the sentence, "He is in hot water with his boss because he missed the client meeting." Notice how the phrase doesn't just describe a mistake, it describes the fallout from that mistake. The tension, the awkward conversations, the consequences that follow. Or think about this one, "If you keep lying, you'll end up in hot water." It's practically a warning wrapped inside an idiom, and honestly, that warning holds up in real life. Lying might feel like the easy way out when you're cornered, but it tends to snowball into something far more complicated than the original problem ever was. So next time you're tempted to cover something up instead of just explaining it honestly, remember this phrase, because hot water has a way of scalding you right when you least expect it. Sticking with the kitchen theme for a second, let's talk about potatoes, specifically the kind you should never try to hold with your bare hands. If you've ever pulled a potato straight out of boiling water or a hot oven, you know the reflex. You can't hold on to it for more than a second or two before you're forced to drop it, shake your hands, and let it cool. That physical reflex is exactly what the idiom hot potato is built on. When we call a topic or a situation a hot potato, we mean it's controversial, sensitive, or difficult enough that people actively avoid dealing with it. Nobody wants to be the one holding it, because holding it means facing the consequences, the criticism, or the backlash that comes with it. Think about workplace situations. There's often that one difficult client everyone quietly avoids. Passing the responsibility from person to person like they're literally tossing a hot potato around the office. Or think bigger on a national scale, the issue of corruption has become a hot potato for the government. Politicians often dodge this topic entirely, not because it isn't important, but because addressing it directly risks damaging their public image, just like grabbing an actual hot potato risks burning your hand. Here's another everyday example. That argument is a real hot potato. Let's not bring it up again. This is the kind of thing you might say about a disagreement within a friend group or a family, a topic so charged that everyone silently agrees it's safer left untouched. So the next time you notice people awkwardly changing the subject, dodging a question, or passing responsibility onto someone else, ask yourself, is this a hot potato? Chances are it is. What's fascinating about both of these phrases is how naturally they map onto real emotional experiences. Hot water isn't just uncomfortable, it's the kind of discomfort you can't ignore, the kind that forces immediate reaction. And a hot potato isn't just something you avoid, it's something you actively pass along because keeping it in your hands for too long guarantees you'll get burned. English is full of these little physical metaphors, and once you start noticing them, you'll realize native speakers use them constantly, almost without thinking. That's actually the real goal here, not just memorizing definitions, but training your brain to recognize the emotional logic behind each phrase, so that when you hear it in a movie, a podcast, or a conversation with a colleague, it clicks instantly.